My name is Ryan. I'm 70 years old. I used to work as a technology engineer for over 4 decades, mostly in the fields of data systems and internal security. For most of my adult life, I lived by principles, spent my time working, raising 2 children, and taking care of my wife, who passed away 3 years ago. After retiring, I sold our old house in the suburbs of Salt Lake City and moved in with my eldest son's family, Marks, in Boulder, Colorado. At the time, I thought it made perfect sense to be closer to my grandchildren, help out where I could, and have someone to talk to so I wouldn't feel so alone after losing my wife. At first, everything seemed fine. My grandson, little Nathan, was very fond of me. Every afternoon, I would take him to the nearby park, teach him how to ride a bike, or tell him little stories about the time I worked with computers as big as desks. But after a few months, I started to sense small changes in the household atmosphere. Emily, Mark's wife, would often sigh when she saw me sitting in the living room. She never said anything directly, but I could feel her discomfort in her eyes, or in how she served dinner without asking me what I'd like to eat. Mark was always busy. My son worked as a manager for a chain of sporting goods stores. He often came home late and didn't talk much. I understood. Life is different now. People have so many things to worry about, and I didn't want to become a burden. I tried to make things easier. I cleaned up the backyard, fixed the squeaky hinge on the kitchen cabinet, and took Nathan to school every morning. One evening, while I was reading in my room, I accidentally overheard whispers coming from the kitchen. Mark and Emily were talking. Their voices were low, but I caught a few words. "I'm tired, Mark. I don't feel comfortable in my own home anymore. Is your dad going to stay here forever?" "I know. I've been thinking about it too. Maybe we should look into a good nursing home for him. Somewhere gentle with proper care. He's not working anymore, and he's not much help." From that day on, I started to withdraw. I ate dinner a bit later, avoided family gatherings, and spent more time walking around the neighborhood. I didn't blame them, but I couldn't stop thinking, is this how a man's life ends, after working hard and sacrificing for his family? I never brought up that conversation with Mark. I didn't ask Emily about the nursing home. I just quietly adjusted a few habits. I woke up earlier, brewed coffee before anyone else was up, read the newspaper on the porch, then walked around the block. These routines made me feel like I still had some control over my life, even if just a little. Mark still showed concern from time to time, but it was the kind of distant concern that felt more like duty. Things like, "Are you taking your medication?" Or, "Do you want the doctor to check your knee again?" I appreciated it, but I also knew it was nothing like the conversations we used to have when he was a boy. Emily grew more distant. She hesitated to ask me to babysit, didn't want me to come along when they dined out, and sometimes she even locked the kitchen door when I was downstairs. At first, I told myself I was being too sensitive, but some things can't just be coincidence. Once, I went to the shared bathroom and found that my towel had been removed. It wasn't in its usual place. Another time, I overheard Emily talking to a friend on the phone. It's not easy living with old people, especially when they still think they're needed. I didn't think I was needed, but I didn't think I was useless either. One Friday evening, the whole family went out to eat. I wasn't invited. When I asked, Mark simply said, "It's just to get together with Emily's old friends. You should stay home and rest." I nodded, but later Nathan, my 6-year-old grandson, shared something by accident. "We had pizza today. Lucy's grandma was there too. She told such funny stories." That's when I realized I wasn't uninvited because the event didn't suit me. I was left out because I no longer belonged. One day, during a routine checkup, the doctor said, "All my numbers look great. You're healthier than a lot of 60-year-olds, Ryan." I just smiled, but my mind wasn't on blood pressure or cholesterol. It was elsewhere. What's the point of being healthy if your loved ones no longer want you around? I started seriously considering moving out. Then one afternoon, While cleaning out an old cabinet, I found a sealed envelope from nearly 20 years ago. It had the logo of my old company, where I worked for many years as an engineer. In small print it read, "Restricted shares, employee option plan." I opened it, read every line, and froze. Maybe things weren't over, after all. The document in my hands had yellowed with age. The edges were brittle, and the ink had faded over time. I carefully laid it on the dining table, grabbed my reading glasses, and sat down to examine each line closely. I vaguely remembered the stock option plan my old company offered back in the late 90s. Back then, it was still a small e-commerce startup. Instead of direct raises, they gave us the option to receive part of our salary in internal shares. Not many people took the offer. I did, not because I was savvy with investments, but because I had just finished paying my daughter's college tuition. I thought, if I don't need it now, it won't hurt to let it sit. Years later, that company was acquired by Amazon. I still remember the day the merger was announced. The office was filled with uncertainty. I was reassigned to a different department, and a few years later, I left the company. Amidst hundreds of changes, I never paid much attention to that small batch of shares. I didn't sell them, didn't transfer them, and after my wife fell ill, I paid even less attention to speculative matters. The next morning, I took the folder to the bank. The teller referred me to a senior financial advisor, a young man in a crisp shirt and light gray tie. He checked the documents, cross-referenced the share ID, and opened his computer. A few clicks. Then his eyes widened. "Mr. Ryan, do you know the current value of these shares?" I shook my head. He turned the screen toward me. The number appeared. $4,218,460 and 12 cents. I sat still for a few seconds, not from shock, but trying to remember how I could have forgotten nearly 20 years of value. I didn't say anything. I simply nodded, then asked him to print the statement and keep notarized copies. Then I asked to transfer the funds into a private account under my name, with two-factor security. He said that would be fine. I thanked him, stood up, and walked out of the room as if I had just had an eye exam. No one knew. I didn't go straight home. I stopped by a small cafe on Main Street, ordered a black coffee, no sugar, and sat by the window. Outside, the sky was clear. The golden leaves were turning toward the end of autumn. A 70-year-old man, who had just learned he was worth over $4 million, was sipping a $3 coffee in silence. I thought about Mark, about Emily, and about Nathan. But most of all, I thought about this. What would I do with the silence they had given me, now that it was my turn to return it, in a very different way? I didn't withdraw the money right away. I didn't make any sudden transfers, or buy anything extravagant. That evening, I came home later than usual. Emily didn't ask. Mark was on a video conference, his office door closed. Nathan was already asleep. Everything was normal, but colder. I went to my room, sat down, and pulled out a small notebook. I wrote down a list. Change primary contact address. Register new apartment lease. Draft a will. Select charity organization. Write card for Nathan. I wasn't trying to cut ties. I just wanted everything to be clear. The next morning, I visited a lawyer, a woman in her early 40s, polite and patient. I asked her to help me restructure all my financial records, transfer all assets to my name, remove Mark from the old beneficiary list, and set aside a portion for Nathan when he turns 21. The majority, I plan to leave to a nonprofit that provides technology scholarships to high school students called the June Foundation, named after my wife. The lawyer asked, "Does your family know?" I just shook my head. "And you want them not to know until it's necessary," I said. That night, I packed my things. Not much. A few sets of clothes, some books, old photo frames, and the watch my wife gave me on our 30th wedding anniversary. I left everything else behind. On the table, I left a handwritten note. "Mark, thank you for giving me a home these past months. but I think it's time I found a place of my own, to live the rest of my life the way I choose. Don't worry, I'm okay, and I hope that somewhere in each of us, there's still a small corner left to remember one another with a little tenderness. I left the key on the kitchen counter and closed the door softly. I moved into a small apartment on the southern edge of the city, near the foothills. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm and quiet. From the balcony, I could see the trees changing colors, and each morning, I could brew my coffee without hearing anyone's sighs. A week later, I received an email from Mark. It was very short. "Dad, are you okay? I'm sorry if we made you uncomfortable. Maybe we were a little thoughtless. But please, don't be angry. Let me know if you need anything." I didn't reply right away. I let the email sit there. Not deleted, not answered. Just marked as unread. I began my new days in a very old-fashioned way. Morning walks, reading at noon, and tea in the afternoon. But this time, I lived with the feeling that I was no longer borrowing space from anyone else. It had been over a month since I left Mark's house. During that time, I didn't reach out, nor did I answer any calls, except for a few voicemail messages from Nathan. Mostly, he talked about school, his math quiz scores, or a class picnic. The boy didn't understand the quiet cracks between adults. And maybe he didn't need to, at least not yet. I spent that time finalizing legal matters. The lawyer helped me divide the investments into 3 clear parts. One part went into an investment bank for long-term growth. One part was kept for monthly living expenses, and the rest was set aside for the social projects I had in mind. Scholarships, STEM class support for underprivileged students, and community tech centers for seniors. I wasn't trying to hide anything. I simply chose not to share, because I wanted to see how they viewed me, when there was nothing left to expect from me. And then it happened. I got a call from Lila, my daughter, on a Saturday afternoon. "Dad, what's going on? Mark and Emily have been calling me nonstop. They said you're hiding some kind of asset, Amazon stock." I was a little surprised by how fast the news spread, but not shocked. I'm not hiding anything. I just kept it to myself. I replied calmly. Lila was silent for a few seconds. She's a kind person, measured, rarely reactive. "I'm not upset, Dad. I just wish you had told me. Are you okay?" "I'm okay. In fact, I feel better than ever." That night, Mark called. Repeatedly. I let the phone stay on silent. The next morning, I opened my email. There was a message from Emily, longer than I expected her to write. "Ryan, I know there were times I didn't treat you right. If you felt hurt, that was never our intention. Mark feels terrible. And I don't even know where to begin. Just know, we never imagined you would leave like that. If you can, please give Mark a chance to see you again." I read the message, then closed the laptop. I thought about all the times I ate dinner alone in the kitchen because they went somewhere and forgot to tell me. The times I took out the trash, fixed the sink, washed their car, all in silence. And the time I stood under the porch, watching them drive off. No one had asked if I wanted to come along. I didn't carry those moments with me when I left, but I still remember them. A few days later, Mark showed up unannounced. I saw him through the window, standing in the yard, holding a bag of donuts and 2 paper cups of coffee. I didn't go out right away. I sat for 5 more minutes before opening the door. "How are you, Dad?" he asked. I nodded. Mark looked around, trying to keep his tone casual. "This place, it's nice." I invited him in. We sat across from each other, the coffee between us growing cold. Mark exhaled, then said, "I know I was wrong. Emily, too. Maybe we were too busy, too careless, or just too used to thinking you'd always be there, unchanging, needing nothing." We parted in silence. He didn't mention the money. He didn't ask why I hadn't shared it. And I didn't bring up the $4 million, because now what I owned wasn't just money. It was independence, and the feeling of living life on my own terms.